I sat in my car outside the restaurant, watching. I wasn't even sure why I was there. Perhaps a part of me already knew the truth, and was simply waiting for the proper time to confirm it. Or perhaps I was being paranoid. That is what she would say if she knew I was present. She calls me insane, controlling, insecure. She was good at it, turning things around, making me question myself. Started 3 weeks ago. Jake, a buddy of mine, saw Emily downtown while she was supposed to be attending a conference. 2 states away, he texted me a photo, not a blur. Could be any snapshot. But it's a clear shot of her sitting outside a cafe, laughing, her hand resting a little too securely on some guy's arm. I convinced myself there must be an explanation. Perhaps it was an old friend. Perhaps it was a client. Maybe Jake was mistaken about when he took the picture. I asked her about it. I didn't confront her with charges. I made a casual mention. Hello, Jake. I saw you downtown the other day. They said you looked happy. She did not even blink. Oh, yes. I had a layover on the way back. I thought I'd have some coffee while I waited. Smooth. Confident. A perfect falsehood. Except for one issue. I examined her flight information. There were no layovers. That should have been sufficient. That should have been when I confronted her, pushed her into a corner. I demanded the truth, but instead played stupid. I let her think I believed her because I wanted to see how far the rabbit hole went. And it went deep. She began to go out more, inventing scarcely credible explanations. Late appointments, last-minute plans with folks I'd never met. Errands that lasted hours. Her phone was never more than an inch away, and she guarded it like a teen trying to hide text messages from their parents. One night, she left it in the kitchen to charge while she showered. The screen began to light up. A message preview flashed up. Just a name. Nathan. I did not recognize it. I did not touch her phone. I did not open the message. I did not need to. My stomach already knew. That is why I am here now. Sitting outside a dimly lit restaurant, observing her through the glass. She was dressed up. She didn't make the same effort for me anymore. Her smile was big. Her gaze fixed on him. On Nathan. I should have gone in right then. Should have flipped the table and demanded an explanation. But I did not. I sat there, watching her lean in and her hand find his. When she kissed him, I felt something crack inside. Not sad. Not heartbreak. Just something chilly. Something definitive. And that's when I stepped out of the automobile I didn't recognize. Walking enters the restaurant. One moment I was standing on the curb, looking through the glass. The next thing I knew I was inside. The warm aroma of garlic and wine combines with the sounds of mellow jazz and clinking silverware. A hostess greeted me, but I scarcely heard her remarks. My gaze was fixed on the back of Emily's head. She was laughing. She was laughing with this guy as if nothing else mattered. As if she were not married. As if she didn't lie to me every day. Nathan mumbled something, and she reached across the table to trace her fingertips along the back of his hand. That was it. That was the moment I lost all restraint. I approached their table and pulled out the empty chair across from them. Emily looked up at the sound of wood scraping against tile. Her smile lingered for a single second. Then she noticed me. Her entire face changed color. Her lips opened slightly. And for the first time in a long time, she appeared completely taken aback. Hey, baby, I said with an unnervingly calm voice. Nathan, to his credit, looked bewildered rather than afraid. He looked at Emily and waited for her to explain. She blinked quickly, struggling to figure out how to twist this. What are you doing here? She finally inquired, her voice a little too high. I said, grab a bite, referring to the menu. The surroundings appear to be pleasant. I thought I'd check it out. You? Nathan peered between us, finally noticing Emily. Then she did what she had always done. She attempted to lie. This is my coworker Nathan, she added, hurriedly putting on a timid smile. We just ended our meeting. I gazed at her, then at the half-empty wine glasses, the untouched plates of costly food, and the way their hands had been interlaced only seconds before. A meeting, correct? Nathan was still catching up, glancing at me and then at her with a puzzled frown. Wait, Emily, what's going on? I gave a quick laugh. Oh, she hadn't told you? That is cute. I fixed my sight on him completely. I'm her husband. Nathan moved his chair back gently, as if he had been showered with freezing water. Emily snapped. Why are you here? She growled, her panic turning to wrath. I met her stare steadily and unwaveringly. Why am I here? Why am I here? I let the words hang between us and watched her squirm. Then I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice just enough to make her lean in, since I wanted to see how far you would go with this. She blinked, swallowed. She knew. Nathan exhaled and ran a hand through his hair. You mentioned you were divorced. Of course, she did. I let out a deep exhale while looking at her, really staring at her. And it was the first time I saw her. For what? She wasn't the woman I married, not the lady I spent my life with, but a liar, a coward, and a stranger. I pushed back my chair and stood. You deserve each other, I replied simply. Then I walked away, leaving Emily grasping for words she could never take back. I drove home in quiet. No music or talk radio. Only the monotonous buzz of tires striking the road. My hands remained steady on the wheel. My breath was even. I was not shaking. I was not yelling. I was nothing, just emptiness. Emily had not chased after me. She had not phoned. She hadn't even bothered to come up with a last-minute excuse. Perhaps she felt she could deal with the ramifications later. Create another story. Make the truth more palatable. However, there was no way to repair this. When I pulled into the driveway, I just sat and stared at the house we had made together. The porch light flickered slightly, as it always did when the wind came up. Her automobile was not here. Of course it was not. I walked inside and let the door swing closed behind me. The house smelled like her perfume. Faint but recognizable. I walked slowly through the living room, past the framed wedding photos, the bookshelves. We battled over the couch, where we used to sit and laugh as if we meant it. I did not even hesitate. I grabbed a duffel bag from the hall closet and marched right into the bedroom. Clothes. Shoes. Essentials. It did not take long. I was not going to be the idiot that allowed her to come home and gaslight me into staying. It was simply a mistake. I was about to inform you we were having troubles. I never intended to hurt you. I could hear the justifications formulating in her mind. The way she cocks her head. I see that desperate look in her eyes. Make it seem as if this was my fault. Not this time. I shut the bag and turned to leave, but something attracted my attention. The framed photograph on her nightstand. We were in Greece 3 years ago. She was wearing that blue sundress, which she claimed was her favorite. I recall how she smiled that day. She reached for my hand without thinking. I picked up the frame, held it for a while, then turned it over and took the photo out. I folded it neatly in half, then into quarters. Then I ripped it straight down the middle. I let the pieces fall to the floor, picked up my purse, and walked out the door without looking back. I wasn't sure where I was headed. I didn't care. I just knew one thing. This was the last night I'd ever spend under Emily's roof, and I barely got it 2 blocks before my phone began vibrating. Emily. I let it ring. Then another call, followed by another. A text flashed up. Where are you now? We need to talk. 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 She had her chance to speak. She had months, possibly years, to speak. And now that she's discovered she's been caught, her little fantasy existence is unraveling. She was now eager to engage in discussion. I pulled into the first motel I saw, dropped some cash on the counter, and got a key from a half-interested clerk who didn't even look up from his phone. The room was nothing spectacular. Stiff sheets, buzzing, fluorescent lights, and a TV remote without a back cover. But it was mine. Most importantly, it wasn't the house where Emily would be pacing, practicing her lies, waiting for me to get home so she could sink her claws back in. I put my suitcase to the floor, perched on the edge of the bed, and took a slow breath. The phone was still vibrating. I flipped it over to check the screen. 13 missed calls and 9 texts. Then one more message arrived. I can explain anything. I let out a sour laugh. It was her move. Emily was the queen of explanations. A natural-born liar. She was capable of bending reality to her will, make you rethink what you witnessed with your own eyes. But not this time. I turned off my phone, threw it on the nightstand, and stared at the ceiling in the distance. A car alarm rang while a faucet in the bathroom flowed in an inconsistent rhythm. I should have felt fatigued. My body felt like it had been struck by a truck, but my mind was racing. I kept picturing the moment at the restaurant, her fingers dancing over his palm, her face falling as she saw me. The sheer chutzpah of pretending she was in a business meeting. And Nathan, the moron who most likely had no idea she was married. He had stared at her as if she were the only woman in the world, exactly as I used to. I sat up abruptly. My heart is beating. There was more. There had to be. You don't just abandon a marriage for a random guy. It was not her first time. Couldn't be. I refocused my phone on her. Messages rushed in immediately, but I ignored them. Instead, I scrolled back through past messages. Social media users shared images. I wasn't looking for anything specific. Just a sensation, a trend, or a situation in which I should have known. And then, in between vacation photographs and anniversary texts, I noticed it. Emily is shown at a holiday party last year, holding a drink and surrounded by coworkers. A typical image, the kind you'd pass over without thinking twice. Nathan and Emily were standing directly behind her. She wasn't simply standing beside him. Her body was leaned toward him, and her arm barely touched his. A year ago, she smiled at a coworker who wasn't expecting it. This hasn't just started. This had been going on for so long that I stared at the photograph, until my vision blurred. 1 year. I spent a full year organizing anniversary surprises, cooking her favorite dishes, rubbing her feet after a long day. She was already his. The room suddenly seemed too small. The air was too heavy. I stood up from the bed and began pacing. My hands clutched my hair. This was more than just an error. This was not a moment of weakness. This was deliberate. My phone vibrated again. Another text. Emily, please come home. We need to talk. We. There was no longer we. I clenched my teeth and typed again before I could stop myself. Me? How long? The reply came quickly. Almost too quick. Emily. How long? What? I let out a bitter, humorless laugh. Still playing dumb. Still lying. Me? How long have you slept with him? 3 dots appeared. Then they disappeared. Then they returned. Then nothing. That was all the answers I needed. I took my keys and rushed out of the motel room. I was not going back home. I didn't need to hear her falsehoods in person. I needed something else. Proof. Because after being lied to for so long, you begin to wonder how deep the deception is. I drove back into town, my mind racing in all directions at once. If she had been dating Nathan for a year, what else had she kept from me? How many business visits were just holidays for him? How many girls spent their evenings in his bed? And then a darker thought struck me. Was I the only other guy? I almost floored the gas pedal. Emily's office building loomed ahead. The parking lot was almost empty this late at night, but I wasn't looking for her. I went hunting for someone who knew, and I found her. Carly. Emily has a helper. She was walking to her car. She threw a tote bag over her shoulder. Her phone brushed against her ear. I came up next to her and rolled down my window. She looked over, startled, but when she realized it was me, her face contorted into an unfathomable expression. Hey, I said, pushing my voice to be level. Can we speak? She paused, groaned, and placed her phone away. Look, I do not know anything. Do not lie to me, Carly. I cut in. Not tonight. Her lips pulled together in a tight line for a time. She appeared to be debating something. Then she moved closer to my car. How much do you know? She inquired quietly. I swallowed hard. For a year with Nathan. Carly breathed sharply. Jesus. Did you finally find out? My stomach twisted. Finally, she gave me a mournful, almost pitying expression. It was not just Nathan. The entire globe tilted. What? My voice barely came through. Carly paused, as if she'd been waiting for this moment. She reached into her tote bag and retrieved a little USB disk. Emily isn't as careful as she thinks, she whispered, putting it into my palm. Check her work laptop. You'll find what you're looking for. I stared at the small bit of plastic. My mind screams. She squeezed my hand once, then turned to walk away. I sat there, clutching the USB like a live wire, aware that whatever was on it was about to change everything. I drove directly to the house. Not because I wanted to see Emily. No, that was the last thing I wanted. Instead, I want her laptop and to know everything. My fingers tightened around the USB disk as I drove into the driveway. Emily's automobile was again parked properly, as if nothing had occurred, as if my whole world hadn't just collapsed. I got out of my automobile. My motions are sharp and controlled. My body felt strangely tranquil. Yet my mind was racing, and every nerve was on edge. I pushed the front door open without hesitation. Emily was seated on the couch, clutching her phone when she saw me. She jumped up, her face a tangled mess of relief and worry. Oh, thank God you returned. She took a breath and moved toward me. Please, let us just. Where's your laptop? I shut her off. She blinked. What? Your laptop. Emily. Where is it? She paused. Too long. Far too long. My stomach turned. She knew. She understood what I was after. Why? She questioned, her voice. Be careful now. Defensive. I took a hesitant step forwards, my jaw stiffening. I'm done with the lies. I'm finished with the excuses. I want the truth. All of it. Her gaze moved to the hallway. The office. Bingo. I moved before she could stop me, marching past her and pushing the door open. Her laptop was still plugged into the desktop charger. Stop. She yelled immediately behind me and grabbed my arm. You cannot just go through my belongings. I shook her off, ripped open the laptop, and turned it on. When the login screen displayed, she leaned forward and slammed the lid shut. My blood became chilly. Panic. That was not guilt. That was not regret. That was complete, unfiltered panic. Give me the password. My voice remained still. No. Her eyes flared with desperation. You are overreacting. You are acting insane. Please let me clarify. I took out the USB and held it out between us. Carly handed me this. Emily's entire body froze. Her lips parted slightly. Her breath caught. She froze, not out of uncertainty, but because she had realized something. As if someone had just heard the trigger of a loaded rifle. I knew, as did she. And suddenly something changed. The panic on her expression faded. What replaced it? Disgust. Her shoulders straightened, and her lips twisted into something vicious. Something unpleasant. You're such a sad little dude, she spit. My pulse pounded through me. Excuse me. I replied in a dangerously low voice, and her lips curved. Did you think we were an ideal couple? Did you think I was your loyal little wife? Please. She crossed her arms and tilted her head. If you weren't so goddamn dull, I might not have needed other options. Every muscle in my body contracted. Are there any other options? I repeated slowly. She smirked. Go ahead, she murmured, indicating to the USB, plug it in. See for yourself. But don't cry when you learn how little you really meant to me. I stared at her. My heart is beating. She wasn't just an unfaithful wife attempting to hide her traces. She was a monster. And for the first time, I did not experience heartbreak. I was so enraged that I did not say anything else. I simply turned, sat down at her desk, and flipped the laptop open again. Emily remained standing there, arms folded. She was watching me with a smug, defiant expression, as if this was her game, and she was still winning. I plugged in the USB, she snorted. Do you really think Carly knows anything? She is a touch bitter. A folder appeared on the screen. Emily. Work files. Except they weren't work files. I double-clicked, and I saw everything. Messages and emails. Photos and videos. My stomach twisted. I opened a text thread initially. It was not just Nathan. There were several names. Some I recognized from her office. Some I did not. My gaze skimmed the messages, each worse than the last. Emily is unavailable tonight. He's at home. I'll say I'm working late tomorrow. Unknown. I wish I could have you now. Last night was crazy. Emily. I can still feel you all over me. I clenched my fists so hard that my nails dug into my palms. Click on another thread. Emily, you're far better than my hubby. Nathan. Oh yes, Emily. I faked it with him every time I pushed back from the desk so quickly that the chair nearly collapsed over. Emily just made a piercing, nasty sound. Oh, don't be so astonished, she scoffed. What? You thought you were an amazing husband. I should have been grateful to this magnificent man. I could hardly breathe. How long? My voice rang out harsh. She rolled her eyes. Jesus, you, and the timelines. I do not know. Several years, several years. I clutched the desk. My knuckles are white. My entire body was burning. Rage, disdain, and betrayal. All of it knotted together in a conflagration that I could hardly control. I whispered, "You're a psychopath." Her expression twitched. She giggled briefly before flinging her hair over her shoulder. No, she replied. I just became bored. Bored? That single word jolted something within me. I stood up so swiftly that she flinched. But I did not yell. I did not grab anything. I did not make charges. I just stared at her, intently. And for the first time, I realized I didn't feel anything. No more love or heartbreak. Just a horrible disgust for the woman standing in front of me. I turned, grabbed the USB from the laptop, and proceeded to the door. Emily scoffed behind me. Oh please. What are you planning to do? Cry to your lawyer? I hesitated and looked back. No. I replied quietly. I am going to ruin you. Then I walked out, vowing not to return, and admitting that I had not slept that night. I sat in my car, outside the motel, gripping the USB as if it were a detonator. My mind raced over each nasty message. Every betrayal, each moment. She stared me in the eyes with light. Years and years. She had been doing this beneath my nose while I worked hard, planned anniversaries, and believed in a long dead marriage. And she had the audacity to laugh and ridicule me. She believed she had won. She assumed I would simply vanish quietly, lick my wounds, and allow her continue living her wonderful little life unaffected, unpunished. Not a chance. I grabbed my phone and placed the first call. By the next morning, the wheels had already started moving. I began with a lawyer. The greatest darn divorce attorney in town. I wasn't concerned about the cost. I needed someone who could destroy her in court. Then I copied everything. The USB replicated the emails, which were printed, backed up, and saved in 3 different locations. I wasn't simply preparing for a divorce. I was preparing for battle. Then comes the final element. The portion that made my pulse race with anticipation. I forwarded the files to her entire firm, not just human resources, not only her boss. Every single employee, coworkers, subordinates, even the CEO. I sent a simple message. Emily likes to mix career and pleasure. I thought everyone should know. Then I pressed send. The first explosion occurred hours later. Emily's name popped up in every group chat and email thread. Clients witnessed it. Executives witnessed it. The entire company was chattering about her filthy little secrets. Then comes the second explosion. Nathan. I did not have to do anything. The moment the email spread. What about his girlfriend? Yes, he had one too. It turned out she wasn't as quiet as I was. She stormed into the workplace, causing a commotion, and by midday, Nathan had packed away his desk. Emily. She wasn't at the workplace. She never even got there. Because at 9 a.m., she was on a conference call with HR, trying to explain why half of the firm had explicit proof that she had been swindling her way through the office. By lunchtime, she had been fired. And by 2 p.m., she had blown up my phone. I let it ring. I let it ring until my voicemail was full, and the messages changed from angry to desperate. Finally, I answered. The instant I picked up, she yelled into the telephone. You've ruined my life. I smiled. No, Emily, I replied quietly. Did you? She was breathing rapidly, as if she'd been crying or breaking things. I lost my job. She choked out. Nathan's girlfriend arrived at my residence. My buddies won't even speak to me. I have nothing. I leaned back, totally relaxed. That seems rough. You are a piece of rubbish. She snapped. You are very bitter. So pitiful. You couldn't simply move on like a genuine man. You had to behave like a child and ruin everything. I laughed quietly. Oh, sweetie. This is only the beginning. Her respiration became irregular. What does this mean? I didn't respond. I simply hung up. And for the first time in years, I felt liberated. Emily lost it. The calls did not stop. The texts got increasingly frenzied. She was outraged at first, hurling accusations and blaming me, accusing me of being a nasty loser who needed to grow up and go on. But then the pleading began. Emily, please. We need to chat. I can repair it. I never wanted this to happen. I was stupid. Okay. Simply call me pathetic. She was floundering, attempting to find a foothold in the ruins of her idyllic little life. And the knowledge that I had taken everything from her began to sink in. I did not respond. Not when she left sobbing voicemail messages. Not when she texted me at 2 a.m., claiming she had nowhere to go. Not when she arrived at my motel. Yes, she actually did it. It was late, and I had just gone out to get some dinner when I noticed her car parked outside. She was sitting on the hood, arms folded, and looked like a complete disaster. Her makeup was smudged. Her hair is untidy. Her eyes were wild. Emily wasn't the same controlled, haughty person she was before. This was a woman at the edge. I sighed and stopped a few feet away. Leave. She slid off the automobile and took a nervous breath. Simply chat to me. I shake my head. No. Her lips twitched. She swallowed. I don't have nowhere to go. Not my problem. She moved closer. You don't need to forgive me. Just, please let me clarify. Let me. I raised a hand. Emily, let me make this very clear. She froze. I leaned in slightly and lowered my voice. I do not care. Her expression twisted. You don't mind? Her voice crackled. You are my hubby. I gave a harsh laugh. No, Emily. I was your husband. You made sure to destroy it. Tears welled up in her eyes, but I felt no sympathy. She earned it. I lost my job, she whispered. My pals will not speak to me. I can't afford the rent. Not my problem. Her respiration increased. Her hands shook. Suddenly, her expression shifted. The weeping ceased. The desperation dissolved into something different. Something unpleasant. Do you think you have won? She spoke quietly. I tilted my head, did not I? Her jaw clenched, and her lips formed a harsh, venomous smile. You are still obsessed with me. She hissed. You wouldn't have done this unless you still cared. And, guess what? Whatever you do, no matter how hard you try to ruin me. She moved closer, her voice falling to a whisper. You'll never get me out of your mind. I stared at her for a long time. Then I smiled. Oh, Emily, I muttered. You are already gone. Then I turned, got in my car and went away. I did not glance back. Not once, but several months after I divorced my adulterous wife. I received an email from her with this subject line. The truth. What I read stunned me. First, I almost did not open it. I had eliminated Emily from my life, blocked her phone number, relocated to a new apartment, and started again. She was nothing to me anymore. Simply a cautionary tale, A mistake I had burned down and walked away from. But curiosity got the better of me, and I clicked. The email was very long, but the first few sentences made my stomach turn. I hope you are happy. You devastated my life, job, and reputation. I've lost everything due of you. But I suppose it wasn't enough. Emily, was this typical? She blames me for the repercussions of her own conduct. I continued reading. You believe you understand everything, but you don't. There is something I have never told you. Something I plan to take to the grave. But, since you ruined me, why not ruin you both? My breath caught. Then I saw it. The bomb. There was never only one man. Never. Just. Nathan, you always assumed you were my husband. My only one. But this is the truth. You were simply one of many. Even in the beginning, even if you believed we were happy. And the best part? You're not the first man I've married. I stopped breathing. What the hell? I got married before you. I cheated on him too. Of course. I left him when I became bored. Just as I would have left you eventually. But you accelerated the process. Do you understand why I married you? You were easy. Simple to manipulate. It is simple to lie to someone. Simple to control. But you astonished me. I never imagined you could fight back. My hands shook as I scrolled on. You've won the war. But don't deceive yourself into thinking you won the war. Deep down, I'll always have a piece of you. Whenever you close your eyes. Every moment you think of love. Every time you let anybody in. You will hear my voice. You will question if she is also lying. If she is like me. Isn't that the actual punishment? You will never trust again. I slammed my laptop shut, my heart racing in my ears. For a long period, I simply sat there, numb. But then I started laughing because, for the first time, I didn't feel anything. There is no wrath, no pain, and no remorse. Just freedom. Emily believed she had left a scar. That she had buried a profound, unsellable wound within me. But this is the truth. She didn't mean anything to me anymore. She was a ghost. A horrible dream and a name that meant nothing. I erased the email and blocked her address. Then I shut off my laptop, stepped outdoors into the cold evening air, and moved on. Here's the next story. I arrived home at exactly 11:42 p.m. The air outside was frigid enough to see my breath, but my body was burning from tiredness. A grueling day at work, 2 meetings that might have been emails, and a manager who believed micromanagement was a leadership trait. I just wanted to drop my stuff, take a hot shower, and pass asleep next to Jessica. But as soon as I got to the front door, something felt strange. It was locked. Not only the typical lock deadbolt on the inside. I twisted the knob again, rattling it, but it wouldn't budge. My forehead clenched. This was not usual. We only used that lock when we were out of town. I didn't knock anything. I pounded again, but harder this time. Still nothing. The porch light hummed softly above me, putting a dull yellow glare on the door. I took out my phone and contacted Jessica. It rang only once before going to voicemail. That was when my gut twisted into a tight, excruciating knot. I took a step back and gazed up through the bedroom window. The blinds were down as well, but the light was turned on. My gaze flickered to the driveway. Her automobile was there. She was at home, so why the hell wasn't she responding? I knocked again. Loud. 3 solid bangs should have caused her to jump. This time, I overheard something. A shuffle. Then came a low, hurried murmur, as if someone was attempting to remain silent. The knot in my stomach hardened to stone. I was not alone out here, and she was not alone in there for a moment. I stood frozen. My mind was racing to come up with any rationale or excuse that made logical. Perhaps she had earbuds in. Perhaps she fell asleep with the television on. Perhaps she. An abrupt noise broke through the calm. Crashed loudly as if someone had knocked over a chair. Every nerve in my body blazed up. I ran my fist into the door. Jessica. No response. Opened the door. Silence. I stepped back and looked up. Waiting for something. Movement. The blinds shifted, casting a shadow. Then I heard it. The sound that chilled my entire body. The man's voice is low. Muffled, yet unmistakably masculine. I did not think my body moved. I dashed around to the side of the house, straight to the backyard. The grass was damp under my shoes, and my heart was thumping so fiercely that I could hear it in my ears. I tried the back door, locked, of course. Then I saw it. One of the kitchen windows was cracked open slightly to allow air to enter. I grabbed the frame and wrenched the window, screeching as it slid up just enough to fit my fingers under. I lifted my body, dragged myself through, and landed inside with a bang. I didn't care about being silent. I wanted her to listen to me. I wanted him to listen to me. My feet hit the ground, and I moved quickly. The kitchen was dark, but I knew the layout like the back of my hand, passing the table into the hall and up the stairs. I took two at a time. At the top, one heard movement. Frantic. Panicked. The bedroom door was closed. I did not stop. I grabbed the handle and shoved the door open, and there she was. Jessica is standing next to the bed, dressed in nothing but the bed sheet. Her hair was a disaster. Her cheeks flushed, her eyes wide as a deer in headlights, and next to her stood a shirtless man who was still pulling his blasted jeans up for a second. Nobody moved. The entire world felt as if it had stopped. Jessica's lips parted. Her breath was weak. I could explain. I did not even hear her. I was staring at him, at his foolish, scared expression, at the way he fumbled with his belt like a guilty idiot who had been caught stealing from the store. My blood was boiling. Everything in me wanted to attack him, grab him by the throat, and smash his face into the nightstand. My hands tightened so tightly that my claws dug into my palms. And then Jessica did something she should never have done. She reached for my arm, as if I was overreacting. "Baby, please listen to me." I jerked my arm away so quickly that she lurched backwards. My jaw became so tight that it pained. My voice went dead. "Calm. Get him out." She blinked. "What?" I moved one step closer. "Get him out." She paused. And her pause, that little instant when she considered arguing. That's when I realized this wasn't an error. This was not one bad decision. This was planned. I turned on my heel and walked away. I wasn't finished. Not even close. But first I wanted her to sweat. That I did not depart. I wanted to. Every instinct directed me to turn around, walk out the dang door and never look back. But my body would not let me. My hands were shaking. My breathing was shallow, and my heart pounded so fiercely that I could feel it in my throat. I stood at the top of the stairs, fists clasped, listening to what she was going to do next. Behind me, the bedroom was completely silent. No apologies, no chasing after me. Not a single breath sounded scared. And that told me everything. Because if I walked in on my wife like that, if she truly cared, she'd be running me down those stairs. Wailing, yelling, begging. But instead there's stillness. Then, after what seemed like an age, a whisper. "Love. Quick." It's like two people figuring out a game plan. I moved my head slightly to listen more intently. Then I overheard it. A drawer opens, and something metallic clinks. I did not even think. I moved with 3 strides. I was back in the doorway, and there he was. The man was fumbling with something in his hands. Wallet, keys, and phone. He was standing next to the nightstand, stuffing items into his pockets like a damn bank robber, attempting to get away before the cops arrived. Jessica, meanwhile, had pulled on my sweater. The one I bought. The one she used to wear when nestled up next to me on the couch. It now hung over her like a feeble attempt to conceal what she had just done. She turned to face me, her eyes wide. "I thought you'd departed." I said nothing. I just gazed at him. His face was as white as a sheet, and sweat dripped across his brow. He was afraid. Could get out. Initially, he remained still. He cast a glance toward Jessica, as if he were waiting for permission. And that made me want to tear him apart. He was not afraid of me. He was not hesitant because he feared I would damage him. He was hesitant because he wanted to find out what Jessica wanted first. She paused, too. There was not much hesitation. Most people would not catch this. But I caught it. She looked at him for half a second. Her lips parted as if she were about to say something. And then stopped herself. That was enough. This was all I needed to see. I breathed slowly through my nose. "You're unbelievable." She blinked. "What?" I turned to face him. "Are you still here?" My voice was low and deadly calm. The guy jumped. He picked up his shoes off the floor and lurched past me, running down the corridor like a damn coward. I listened as he dashed down the stairs, nearly shoving himself out the front door. I did not follow. I did not have to. Instead, I turned back to Jessica. She stood there, arms crossed over her chest, lips squeezed together like a pouty toddler. As if I were the problem. As if I'd simply stepped in and wrecked her night. My hands tightened into fists at my sides. "Say something," I mumbled. She scoffed, as if I'd asked her the silliest question in the world. "What do you want me to say?" She raised her arms. "You barged in here like a lunatic." I laughed a harsh, unfunny chuckle. I returned home to my residence. To my wife. My voice shook, not from fear, but from the boiling wrath beneath my skin. "You locked me out for him." She rolled her eyes. She rolled her damn eyes. "Will you even apologize?" I asked, my voice dangerously low. She tilted her head, lips pursed. "For what?" I snapped. "For what?" My voice rang out louder than I intended. But I didn't care. "Are you kidding, Jessica?" I found you in our bed with another man. She raised a hand. It wasn't as it seemed. I laughed louder. Oh, seriously? So you're telling me that you two were just playing hide and seek? Simply chilling out, she huffed. You always do this. I halted. What? She threw up her hands. Create a huge deal out of nothing. You are so dramatic. Easier to hear. Dramatic. She had the arrogance to act as if I were the problem. Like she wasn't the one sneaking around and locking me out of my own house, whispering in the dark with a half-dressed loser. Something within me clicked. I nodded slowly. I see. She frowned. What do you see? I breathed through my nose. Stepping back. I can see who you truly are. Her expression twisted. Oh, do not be so. I turned and walked away. Hello, I'm talking to you. I continued strolling down the hall, stairs, and through the living room. I heard her footsteps hurry after me. Heard how she stomped like a child, not getting her way. And then came the last straw. I cannot believe you are making me feel terrible about this. I came to a stop directly at the front entrance. My hand was on the handle, and my body was quivering with wrath. I thought I was going to burst. Then I did something that startled even myself. I took a cautious turn and grinned a cold, knowing smile. She faltered somewhat. I nodded. You're right, Jessica. Her eyebrows rose. Wait. What? You're totally correct. I turned the handle and pulled the door open, gesturing outside. She glanced at me with caution. What are you? I moved aside with a tranquility I didn't realize I had. I delivered the words that entirely removed the smugness from her expression. Get out. Jessica did not move, not at first. She simply stood there. Her arms remained folded over my hoodie. As if that small bit of fabric was enough to protect her from what she'd done. From the facts of the situation. But I refused to back down. The door was wide open. Cold night air rushes inside. But I did not feel it. All I felt was a sluggish, boiling hatred, crawling under my skin and keeping me warm. Her lips parted slightly, and then formed a narrow line. Are you kicking me out? Her voice was not damaged. It was not apologetic. It was insulted. I tilted my head slightly. Did she really believe she was the victim here? She let out a sigh and rolled her eyes. This is ridiculous. She was still not moving. My jaw constricted. Jessica. My voice came out low and dangerously calm. You locked me out of our house, so that you could sleep with another man. Now I am politely asking you to go. She crossed her arms more tightly. I've got nowhere to go. I nearly laughed. The arrogance. The guy you were screwing in my bed fled like his life depended on it. I raised an eyebrow. I am confident he will welcome you. Her eyes sparkled with something. Angry, perhaps embarrassed. But no guilt. Never. Guilt? She huffed and shook her head. You are acting like a child. And that nearly pushed me over the brink. I took a step closer and lowered my voice. I want you out of my home. She turned aside for a half second, biting on her lower lip. She was thinking and calculating. And then she did something that made things perfectly plain. She raised her chin and sneered. You will not do it? I blinked. Excuse me. She tilted her head. There is no genuine innocence. You will not kick me out. You talk a big game. But deep down, she stepped forward. Her voice is incredibly sweet. You are still my little puppy. You have always forgiven me. You constantly let things go. My blood turned icy. The way she put it. The way she stared at me. It's not like she was terrified. It's not like she was sorry. As if she knew she could get away with it. As if she'd done this before. And suddenly, everything I had overlooked over the years, every minute event that didn't make sense, came flooding back all at once. She never answered the phone when I called her late at night. The unexpected extra showers when I returned home from work early. The fighting. She appeared out of nowhere, as if she needed a reason to leave the house. She accused me of cheating even though I hadn't looked at another lady. I'd been so blind, and Jessica, she had planned on it. She was betting on it. She believed I was weak. She assumed I would yell, hurl something, or weep. But, in the end, she expected me to cave, like I usually had. I inhaled deeply and exhaled slowly. Then I did something that took that smug little grin right off her face. I turned, grabbed into my pocket, and took out my phone. She frowned. What are you? I began dialing. Her face plummeted. Wait. I brought the phone to my ear. She lunged at it. I took a step back. No, 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 don't do that. She grabbed my arm. I didn't even flinch when she dug her nails in. I gazed her full in the eyes while listening to the phone tone. Then 9. Only 1. What is your emergency? Jessica froze. I let the words soak in, allowing her intellect to catch up. Then I spoke. Yes. Hello. My voice was calm and steady, the opposite of hers. I have someone in my house that refuses to leave. Jessica's face twisted. Are you kidding me? The operator asked. Sir, are they a threat to you? I caught Jessica's wild, seething gaze and said. Clear as day? Yes. Jessica appeared afraid for the first time that night. Not guilty. Not sorry. Not even ashamed. Scared? Her lips opened slightly, and her breath shook. Are you not serious? I did not break eye contact. I am. The dispatcher's voice cracked over the phone. Sir, is this person armed? Jessica's eyes widened. Oh, my God. Are you telling them that I'm dangerous? She gave a short, humorless chuckle, shaking her head as if I were the insane one. As if I were the one who had deceived her. I disregarded her completely, even my voice. No. She's not armed, but she won't leave my property. And I'd like officers to help. Jessica's face flushed red. She was not used to this. She was used to controlling me, backing down to me and letting things go. Not this time. She reached for the phone again. I stepped back quickly. You are nuts, she hissed. Are you calling the cops on your own wife? I didn't even flinch at the term wife. It meant nothing to me anymore. The dispatcher kept speaking. Sir, what is the address? I began to deliver it, but Jessica snapped. She seized my wrist with both hands, pushing her nails in so firmly that I felt the skin tear. Give me your phone, son of a. I jerked my arm away and spoke the words that turned her pale. Do you really want them to know why I had to call? Silence. A profound, terrible silence. Her chest lifted and sank quickly. Her lips parted, but she didn't utter anything. She understood exactly what I meant. She knew the second the cops arrived, they wouldn't just glance at me. They would be gazing at her, at the guy she had just snuck out of here with. The fact that she had shut me out of my own house for the entire night, so she could cheat in peace, as well as the fact that she scratched me hard enough to draw blood, made her look less smug. I saw it happen, the gears turning in her head, the way her lips trembled as if she wanted to scream, to fight, throw something at me. However, she didn't. Because Jessica may have been a liar, cheater, or manipulator, but she was not foolish. She understood what would happen if the cops arrived. She could see how horrible this looked. She inhaled sharply, her shoulders lifting. Then in the smallest, pettiest voice I'd ever heard from her, she grumbled and finished. I did not react. I did not smile. Did not gloat. I just stared. She pulled her shoes from the floor and pushed them on, virtually marching towards the door. Her hand gripped the frame as she returned to stare at me. This is not over, she hissed. And then I smiled. Not that huge. Just a little, cold sneer. Oh, Jessica. I tilted my head. It already is. I did not wait for her response. I brought my phone back to my ear. She is going. I informed the dispatcher. My voice is calm. There is no need for officers anymore. Jessica let out a furious, impatient scoff before storming out. And I did something I never imagined I would do. I locked the door. Jessica came to a stop in the middle of her step. For the first time tonight. She wasn't arrogant. She was not angry. She was afraid. I turned the phone toward her screen, which was still flashing with messages. Do you want to explain this to me? Her lips separated. There was no sound coming out. She was speechless. Good. I scrolled up, scanning the paragraph again. Unknown number. Did he purchase it? Unknown number. Jessica. Please answer me. Unknown number. We have an issue. Then continue up. Unknown number. The transfer got through. He will not notice anything. Jessica. He is an imbecile. Too busy playing. Devoted husband will check his accounts. My throat became dry. I was finished. Not only with her. Not just in this awful marriage. I was done being blind. I took a slow, steady breath and gazed up at her. This isn't simply cheating, is it? Jessica's mouth opened and closed. Her hands twitched by her sides. She knew she had been cornered. I stepped forward. Did you steal from me? She eventually snapped out of her frozen position. I didn't, I laughed. A harsh and lethal sound. Oh, don't attempt it. I waved my phone. I am reading it with my own darn eyes. It's thousands of dollars, Jessica. Thousands. Asterisk. 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 She swallowed hard, but her face remained fixed in that expression. That guilty, calculating expression indicated that she was scrambling to come up with something. And then she attempted to flip it. She abruptly squared her shoulders, nostrils blazing. Were you spying on me? I just stared. The unrestrained audacity. I caught you red-handed. I asked quietly, are you trying to play the victim? She scoffed. You have no right to access my phone. I took another stride forwards. I had no rights. My voice lowered. Did I have a right when you emptied my account? She flinched. I shook my head. My heartbeat was beating in my ears. Were you using me? She did not refute it. She did not even try. Her silence was the loudest confession she could have made. And just when I thought I'd seen every facet of her, she doubled down. She lifted her head, crossed her arms, and asked, "What are you going to do about it?" I froze. Not because I wasn't sure what to do, but because she believed she could still win. As if she were daring me. As if she expected me to let this go. Not this time. I inhaled deeply. Let me make something absolutely clear. Jessica. She did not move. Are you going to leave tonight? I don't care where you go, but you've left my house. Her jaw clenched. You cannot merely. I can and will. She huffed. You will not call the cops? I gave a slow, menacing smile. You're right, I said. Not yet. Her eyes narrowed. What does this mean? I leaned in just enough to see her nerves jangle. It implies you have only 10 seconds to get out of my house before I report these communications to the police. My lawyer and I paused for impact, allowing the words to sink in. Your family? That hit something. Jessica's face cracked. Her eyes flashed with utter panic before she hid them. Unfortunately, it was too late. She was aware that I had seen it. She attempted to keep it calm. Finished. She rolled her eyes as if this were a little nuisance. I was leaving anyway. She snatched her purse off the floor, swung it over her shoulder, and brushed past me to the door. And for a while, I thought that was it, that she would walk away with her tail between her legs and accept defeat. But then she paused on the doorknob, her shoulders tightening. Then she turned. And what she said next chilled me to the core. Do you think you've won? She gave a gentle, sarcastic laugh. This is not over. My muscles seized. Something about how she said it. So confident and certain. I felt a tingle of unease run through me. Then she smirked. You're going to regret this, she said with a syrupy honey voice. And then she walked out the slammed door, leaving me alone. But I stood there, hands clasped and heart pumping. I knew one thing for sure. Jessica was not done. Not by a long shot did I stand there staring at the door. Waiting. For what? For her to return for a final, bizarre twist to this nightmare. Because Jessica was not the sort to simply walk away. She had plans, always. And if she said this wasn't over, she really meant it. The home remained silent. No more screams. No more nonsense excuses. There are no phony tears. There was no manipulation. Just silent. But my heart was still beating. My hands were still shaking. I needed to do something right now. I locked the door. Every lock. Then, with her phone still in my possession, I began scrolling again. Because if Jessica believed she could screw me over and walk away, she was in for a surprise. I scrolled up, reading the text carefully. This time, the messages were not solely about money. There were names, initials, several phone numbers, and one statement made my blood run cold. Jay will not fight it. He's overly predictable. He'll roll over, like he always does. Unknown number. Good. We need more time. Keep him busy. Jay, how much longer? Unknown number. 2 weeks. Then it's finished. I stopped breathing. What's 2 weeks until? I scrolled quickly. My hands were wet from sweat. My heartbeat was pounding in my ears. I scrolled all the way to the beginning of the discussion. And then, one last gut punch. A message sent over a month ago. Unknown number. He has no suspicions. Nope. He is an imbecile. Then they attached. Imagine a screenshot of my own bank account, with far more money missing than I anticipated. I dropped the phone like if it had burnt me. I was breathing too quickly. It wasn't simply about cheating. This wasn't just about her stealing money. This was much bigger, and I had been too blind to notice it. I took a fast turn, grabbed my own phone, and did the first wise thing I'd done all night. I phoned the bank. The line rang once and twice. Then, thank you for calling. I need to report fraud. The words came out coldly. Flat. I felt like I was no longer myself. I felt like I had become someone else. Because the person I was before tonight was no longer present. Jessica made sure of it. And whatever the hell this was, whatever she had planned, I was about to rip it up. The woman on the phone spoke softly. Like this was just another Tuesday for her. Please confirm your full name and account number. I rattled it off, my heart pounding in my ears. There was a pause. The sound of typing is a slight click of keys. Then what, sir? I've seen several significant payments from your account in the previous few months. Did you authorize these transactions? My stomach dropped. I knew the answer, but hearing it out made it feel more genuine. No, I replied, my voice frigid. Another pause. The typing halted. Sir, one believe you should come in first thing tomorrow. We may have to escalate this to fraud prevention. I clenched my jaw. How much is gone? Another pause. More typing. Then she gave me a number, and the world tilted. I had to hold the table's edge to stay upright. Tens of thousands. Jessica had bled me dry. And I, like a complete fool, hadn't noticed. Sir, one swallowed and forced my voice to remain even. Yes, I can flag the transactions, however some of them have been transferred to external accounts. If you did not authorize them, I definitely urge filing a police report. I will. I was already moving. I'm already getting my keys, wallet, and laptop. Because this wasn't just a random event anymore. Jessica had been planning this for months, and whatever those signals meant, the 2 weeks thing wasn't just any random text. That was a plan, and I had to figure out what the heck it was. I hung up with the bank and called them again. I phoned the cops. Another voice responded. Steady. 911. What is your emergency? I took a breath. My wife stole from me. I mentioned a lot of money, but I believe there's more to it. The officer on the line was silent for a brief moment. Then proceed carefully. Are you safe? I nearly laughed. Safe? Not even close. But, Jessica. She was going to wish she was. The officer's speech remained steady, but I could see he was paying attention now. What do you mean by more to it? I clutched the phone more tightly. I found text messages on her phone. Messages from several numbers. They were talking about distracting me. Something will take another 2 weeks. There was a pause then. Have you saved the messages? I glanced at Jessica's phone, which was still on the table. Is the screen dark? Yes. Good. I need you to get down to the station first thing in the morning. Bring the messages, any financial documents, and anything else that may be pertinent. I breathed through my nose. I will be there. Answer. Yeah. If you suspect your wife is engaging in a criminal activity, you should exercise caution. My jaw clenched. I knew Jessica wasn't just another unfaithful wife who got caught. She was operating a fraud, and I was just another gullible victim. But not anymore. We finished the call, and I remained there for a time, looking at my reflection in the darkened window. I looked like a stranger, exhausted, hollow-eyed, and odd. But I didn't have time to fall apart. I needed more answers, and knew where to find them. I grabbed up Jessica's phone again, and browsed through her texts, seeking for names, dates, and anything else. Then I saw it. An address sent barely a week ago, from one of the unknown numbers, at Uptown Storage Unit 143. My pulse spiked. Storage unit. What the hell was she hiding? I did not pause to think. I did not hesitate. I grabbed my keys, put on my jacket, and headed directly out the door. Because if Jessica thought she could hide secrets from me, she was about to learn how mistaken she was. The drive to Uptown Storage felt like it took hours. In actuality, it was maybe 15 minutes, but my mind was racing the entire time. Jessica had been stealing from me and lying to me. And now it appears she has a storage unit full of God knows what. My hands remained solid on the wheel. But my head was anything but. What was I going to find? Is there hidden money? Fake documents? Something worse? I clenched my teeth and shoved the ideas down. I wasn't backing down now. By the time I arrived into the parking lot, my heart was racing. The place was largely empty. Rows of metal units, barely lighted by a few flickering floodlights. I parked near the entrance and checked Jessica's texts again. Unit 143. I walked out of my car, locked it, and began walking. The storage doors were ancient, damaged, and spray painted with the numbers 137, 138, and 139. I continued going. Footsteps are quiet against the concrete. 4141. 142. I stopped at 143. I stared at it for a time. My chest felt tight. Then I grasped the handle and pulled. Locked. Of course. I searched the door for a keypad, a lock, something. That's when I realized the padlock was new. It looked like it had been altered recently. My pulse quickened. Jessica had arrived within the last few days. I opened my phone again, examining the texts for clues. Anything that will help me get inside. Then I saw it. A 4-digit code, 914. I punched it into the keypad beside the door. Beep, beep, beep. For a little moment, nothing happened. Then a click. I reached for the handle again. I took a slow breath. Then I lifted the door, and what I saw chilled my blood. Inside, files and paperwork were neatly placed in plastic boxes, with cash at the center. Tens of thousands of dollars were neatly stacked. But that wasn't the worst part. Sitting on top of the bins made my stomach plummet. Passport. Jessica has a completely new last name, and an overseas plane ticket for 2, that expires exactly 2 weeks from today. My hands became numb. She wasn't simply cheating. She wasn't only stealing. She had planned to disappear. She was taking someone with her. My air felt knocked out of me. Jessica wasn't simply cheating. She wasn't only stealing. She was running. And she had been planning it for some months. I picked up the passport and opened it with numb fingers. Her photo looked back at me. But what is the name? Not hers. A completely distinct last name. She intended to vanish, to obliterate herself and whoever she was running with. They also took part in this. My gaze shifted to the ticket. First class, one-way international. And there were two. I tightened my jaw so tightly that it hurt. I should have seen it coming. The missing money. The continual lies. The way she had become more irresponsible. She didn't even bother to hide it anymore since she didn't think she needed to. She was counting down the days until she could disappear, leaving me with nothing. But now. I now knew everything. I grabbed my phone and began taking photos. The cash, the documentation, and the forged passport. Jessica had cheated me for years, but this time I beat her to it. I backed out of the apartment, pulled the door down, and left everything just as I found it. Because when dealing with someone like Jessica, you don't confront her. You outplay them. I got back into my car. Hold your hand steady now. I had a plan. I called the police again, but this time I wasn't simply reporting fraud. I was pressing full charges. Bank fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. And if Jessica believed she could walk away from this, she was in for a surprise. Because by the time she found out, I knew she would not be flying first class. She would be in a jail cell. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Also, leave a comment below to share your thoughts on what happened. Take care.